Don't forget to subscribe. Afterwards, the wisest and most spiritual books from the greatest authors await you every day. And now buckle up, sit back and we'll begin. Hayat Inayat Khan. In an eastern rose garden. Mind, human and divine. The mind is not the brain, but that faculty, that intangible and imperceptible activity of which the brain is merely a vehicle. Man limits things that are unlimited and beyond his power of measurement, and therefore he has pictured God in human form or given sacredness to the forms of animals. A person of larger mind has a larger view, and perhaps sees good in everybody, whereas one with a mind always wanting to find some evil will be able to find a trace of evil even in a good person. That means that man is accustomed from childhood to measure and understand things according to his way of understanding, and to examine them in the limited way peculiar to himself. The Vedantas, which represent the ancient philosophy of the Hindus, using Sanskrit, the mother of languages, employ the word manu or manushi for man. Mana is mind, and the English word man has the same origin. This shows that the origin of man's being is his mind, and his external form is so much before his eyes that it hides the other aspect of his being, which seems, in comparison to this, to be invisible. His body is here, but his mind may be in China, the real he is not here. In the story of the prophet's life, his journey to heaven is related. It is said that a heavenly animal came down to earth and took the prophet to heaven. This means that the prophet visited heaven in his mind. It is the state of mind which is heaven, it is the state of mind which is hell, it is the state of mind that makes one great, or feeble, or insignificant, strong or weak. In the Hindu writings it is said, your success or failure depends entirely on your mind. If your mind has failed, no one can bring success, but even if everything has gone wrong, and your mind is set on success, the success is there. The more we think of the mind, the more we understand the nature of the human being. The tendency to sin or virtue, the temperament, the attitude towards right and wrong, failure and success, in fact all changes in life, are entirely dependent on the condition of the mind. The dream tells the state of the mind at the time. The mind is in full play when a person is asleep. It is not free during the waking hours because of the occupations of the day. The dream will show the state of a patient's mind. It is a disturbance of the mind that produces coma. Whatever a man desires, that desire informs us of the state of mind he is in, and those who understand the mind well know the mind of another simply by studying the desires and tendencies of his life. Love of a rose, a lily, a jasmine, of sweet, sour, salt, or savory things, expresses the particular tendency of a person's mind, the mood he is in. Modern education omits the study of the truth which teaches us that unity comes from nature's variety, whereas the sole aim of the mystic is to keep near to the idea of unity and to find out where we unite. There is an Arabic saying, if you wish to know God, you must know yourself. How little man knows while he is in the intoxication of individualism. He thinks, I am a separate being, you are another, there is no connection between you and me, and we all have our own joys and free will. Did man but know it, his life is dependent not only on the objects and things that keep the body alive, but also on the activity of 1,000 minds in a day. Every time a man laughs, it is the reflection of his mind, controlled by the power of another person's mind. Why does he feel sometimes sad, sometimes glad, sometimes cheerful, sometimes enthusiastic, sometimes tired without reason, sometimes depressed and exhausted. We meet so many minds throughout the day and night which are reflected in our own mind, and so the thoughts are changed, seemingly without reason, yet the whole activity of life depends on these thoughts and is changed according to them. Who then can say, "I am an individual, independent and free, I can think as I wish, and I can do what I wish"? We are not doing what we wish, we are not thinking what we wish. There are various thoughts around us in the form of men and animals and entities which influence our mind and feeling and thought. We cannot escape them. No one can escape being affected by another person's mind. There is always some person stronger than us, and always someone weaker than ourselves. We are connected with one another. Our lives are tied together, and there is a link in which we can see one current running through all. There are many globes and lamps, and yet one current is running through all. The mystic seeks to realize this constantly and to impress it on his mind in whatever he may see. What, for him, are the waves of the sea? Are they not the sea itself? Their individuality exists only insofar as one wave rises and falls. It rises and falls, but it merges into the sea. The new wave is a different wave altogether. What, for him, is the tree? There is one stem, the leaves spring from it, change their color, and drop off. But at the same time the life of the whole tree depends on the root and stem, and any damage done to either of these affects every branch and bough, every part of the tree. What, for him, is the body? Eyes, nose, head, which of them is his self? The hand has a separate name, the fingers have separate names, every part has a different name. Myriads of thoughts, myriads of imaginations, myriads of feelings. Can we ever number their variety? The different emotions, the different kinds of sorrows, the different grades of joy, can we ever distinguish them or classify them? Our being has so many aspects, but what is it after all that calls itself I, me? It is one, not many. It is simply that if we had no body or mind, we could not realize that we exist. Through all this variety one realizes, I am one. The same ideas work further in the mind, until man finds that oneness which exists behind all these numerous names and forms, and in which he will unite with his Lord. This shows that the experience of individuals, the thoughts, feelings and knowledge of individuals and the experience of nations, of races, throughout all ages and periods of history, have not belonged only to individuals, not even to the multitude, to the nations, the races, but have always gone back till they came to that depth, where they were assimilated with what is called the divine mind. All the different minds are the different leaves of one tree. Some minds are branches, some are boughs of the tree, and there is only the one source to which all are attached. No object or life can exist without one central point in which everything meets and joins together, and that meeting ground is the divine mind. The Brahmins therefore taught people to bathe at the place where rivers meet. The purification of life was symbolized by bathing at Sangam. Those who really understood knew that this pictured the divine mind, that in life purification lies in touching the depth of life's sea, in which the myriads of forms and aims all join. The activity of all beings is directed from that center. The Quran says that no single atom moves independently of the hand of God. That is, no activity of any kind takes place, either here or in the starry space, without the impulse from within, from that depth of life where all minds and the effects of all activity unite. Coming now to the moral side of the subject, We may ask in what way we should carry on our life. Should we be satisfied by depending on one power working? That would be just like paralysis of a part of the body. The hand would not move. Just think, where have our thoughts and impulses come from? Should we then act upon every impulse that comes? Should we not take action in every case, seeing they all come from God? No, for it is the realization of the mind that makes things right or wrong, good or bad, spiritual or material. It is your own thought, not the action. It is as you make it. Although the impulse is from within, if it is wrong, you have made it wrong. If it is right, it is because you make it so. The law justifies you. There is no other law. It is your law. Every mind, whether stupid or wise, wicked or virtuous, loves goodness and beauty. What is good? Good is that which is beautiful, what you admire, what you cannot help admiring. You admire the beauty of a person's kindness, beauty of action, feeling, and thought. Nobody tries to see ugliness or to follow the path of evil. Is there anyone who will say, "Please do not be kind to me, please deceive me"? No one likes to be fooled. Wickedness is to seek to gain and not to give, but even the wicked person is still awake to beauty. The mystic is guided by his own mind. That which we seek in life we must give to another. If it is kindness, give it. If goodness, give it. If service, give it. The whole secret of happiness in life lies in this. When we seek happiness in the kindness of another, it means that we depend on the kindness of another person to make us happy, and as long as we look to another to make us happy, we keep expecting that which we ought ourselves to have given. Not till then do we know what justice is. The world is a dome, where every action is the echo of another. Do good, it will come back. If not from one person, it will come from another. That is the echo. You do not know from which side it will come. It will come 100-fold more than you give. If we give love, will we get coldness? If we do good, can we get evil? We cannot be a judge of the action of another until we ourselves are selfless. Only then will justice come to us, only then will we understand the nature of justice. Self is the wall between us and justice. There is only one thing that is truly just, and that is to say, I must not do this. But when we say this to another we may be wrong. The mystic develops his mind in this manner, purifying it by pure thought, feeling, and action, only following this one line of thought. Pure means free from sense of separateness. Whatever difference in principles of right and wrong religious faith may show, no two individuals will ever differ in this one natural principle. Every soul seeks after beauty, and every virtue, righteousness, good action, is nothing but a glimpse of beauty. Once having this moral, the Sufi does not need to follow a particular belief or faith to restrict himself to a particular path. He can follow the Hindu way, the Muslim way, the way of any church or faith, provided he treads this royal road. That the whole universe is but an immanence of beauty. We are born with the tendency to admire it in every form, and we may not blind ourselves by being dependent on one particular line of beauty. We will not get it from another. Give it. Let us make our action, our thought beautiful, and let others profit by it. How is the perfection of mind reached that we have to touch? It is reached through contemplation, through realization and understanding of the one current running through the whole of life. We begin to contemplate on that. The mind, which we call in religious language the Almighty, and in mystical terms the divine mind is the depth of life, the depth of activity, with which all activity and every activity is connected. Therein lies the whole of religion. The mystic's prayer is to that beauty, and his work is to forget the self, to lose himself like a bubble in the water. The wave realizes, I am the sea, and by falling into the sea prostrates itself before its God. As it is said, be ye perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. Willpower. When the mind inquires into the nature of willpower, it becomes a question whether it is a power of the mind, a power of thought, or a power of the brain. Those who cannot see beyond the power of the brain call it brain power. Those who cannot see beyond the mind call it a power of the mind. Those who cannot conceive of the existence in man of anything above the feelings consider willpower to be a power of feeling. A Sufi understands it to be the divine power. It is the divine will that is manifested throughout the whole universe, which has created the whole universe, and it is part of the divine will that manifests itself through us. Everything we do in life is governed and directed by that power. Were it not that there is but one power to govern and direct, how would it have been if one foot determined to go to the north and the other to the south? Our two eyes might have turned in opposite directions, one to the west, the other to the east, had there not been one willpower behind them to direct their gaze towards one object. When lifting a certain thing, one hand might have gone up and the other down, had there not been one willpower to govern both and cause them to join in the one movement. This shows that each individual has one willpower which governs several organs of our physical existence, as well as our thoughts and imaginations. All are directed consciously or unconsciously by the one power. We could not have accomplished one single thing in life had willpower not been at work. But there are two ways in which the willpower works. Firstly, when it is lighted with the light of intelligence. Secondly, when it is not so lighted, but works by itself. When it works by itself, we call it accidental. We do things accidentally which we have not intended to do. But when willpower makes our mind and body work consciously, then the light of intelligence is followed, and the willpower is acting consciously. This is the difference between various happenings. In the one we are conscious of what we are thinking, we are conscious of what we are speaking, and of what we are doing in proportion to our willpower, and to the light that is thrown upon it from the light of our intelligence. But we have acted without willpower when we have to say, I have done something I should not have done. I have said something I should not have said. I have thought something which I should not have thought. When a person says, what I did is terrible, I said something I should not have said, it means that during the time he said or did it, the willpower was there, but the strength and light of intelligence had not fallen upon it to the extent to which they should. There are two aspects of our being: the willpower or governing power, and the vehicles, the mind and the body. Both are governed and controlled by that one governing power. In one aspect of our being we are king, in the other aspect we are minister, and in a third aspect we are servant. We are minister when our mind works, and we are servant when the body works. We are king when the willpower works. When this power loses its control over the mind, then our thoughts become disordered. They dwell in any regions and wander on any lines, even those which our moral standard is perhaps not drawn for them. And our body also works in a disorderly way when the power of the will is lost. Therefore all illnesses, all failures, all disappointments and faults in life are caused by just one thing: weakness of willpower. Man, not knowing this, sometimes considers the willpower to be a power of thought and mind. He does not know that behind mind there is something else. When the will is behind it, the body is powerful too. There was a well-known Indian fakir who was able to lift an elephant. How can a man lift an elephant? However strong he may be, what comparison can there be between the two? What power is at work? It was his willpower that was greater than the elephant's. The great and wonderful things that man has done in this world that we see around us are all the outcome of man's will. Animals, with all their strength, have not that will. Therefore puny man stands before the elephant and says, "Sit down," and the elephant sits down. "Stand up," and the elephant stands up. With all the strength in its body, still the elephant listens to him. That is how the fakir lifted the elephant. Man makes tigers, lions, horses work. He even makes his thought and will act through inanimate things. Even through objects his willpower can be manifested. But when man does not realize its effect upon living creatures, how can he experience his power over objects? Jalaluddin Rumi, in his Masnavi, speaks of fire, air, water, earth, and ether as beings, while man calls them things. To man they are things, to God they are beings, obedient servants. Whatever he wishes, they do. As the servant acts according to his master's desires, so these elements act as God desires. Further, not only does the will of God work through elements, but the will of man also, in proportion to the power of his will. A loaf of bread given with willpower can cure a man's disease more successfully than a medicine, if there is enough willpower with it. The lesson of Christ, that if one has faith even as a grain of mustard one can remove mountains, can be understood after one has realized that it is the willpower which does the work. In the East there are superstitions which have a mystical meaning. When a person goes into a new business or goes on a journey, his relatives give him flour or rice in his hand, or some betel nuts, with the wish that he may meet with success. The token itself is nothing, but behind it there is willpower, and the person who received it is believed. Therefore he has responded to the willpower attached to the gift. There is a harmony. The one who wishes to have good luck receives it. Nevertheless, it is not to be inferred from this that a man should be prepared to believe in superstitions or become superstitious. It is to show that he must know the value of willpower and use it in his profession, his business, his home, in all things. Is it not a desirable thing to have willpower? Is it not desirable to have physical strength? If we are satisfied with feebleness of body, it may be that we are also satisfied to be without willpower. All light is for us, inspiration is for us. Why not use it, as long as we know how to use it to make the best of life? If one wishes to abuse power, one may abuse bodily power, fighting everybody, boxing and wrestling. But that is another part of life. Power is necessary and should be developed, but when man is anxious to develop power, either of body or of mind, he ought to remember that the willpower is behind it all, that if the will is developed the physical and mental power can easily be obtained. The willpower governs the body and the mind. Now coming to the question of the will of man as opposed to the will of God. Which is which? We understand the difference when we perceive that the nature of willpower differs only according to whether it exists in its fullness, or whether it is limited. The willpower in its fullness is divine power. The willpower in its limited state is the individual will. And if there is anything that can be called the source of the whole creation, it is the divine will, it is the will of the absolute being. If we do not desire to call it will, we may call it force, strength, or might. But force, strength, might, energy are all dead words. Force can be without intelligence, energy without intelligence, mind without intelligence, but will means force, energy, might, with intelligence. Therefore it is called divine will instead of divine energy. A person with a materialistic mind would call it energy. But why energy? Is our intelligence energy? It is beyond energy. Is our will only energy? It is energy with intelligence. Therefore divine will is energy, but with divine intelligence. In all there is intelligence. If we observe nature keenly, we see how divine wisdom is working. The animals and birds of tropical countries have fur and feathers which differ from those one finds in the Himalayas and other cold regions. They have suitable bodies, suitable skins. Their life, their whole existence is adjusted to the place where they live. Man's desire, the desire of his senses, is matched by the possession of every sense, every organ of sense, each suited to gratify the desire of his being. The eye meets the requirement of the sense of sight. With all our intelligence and great research, no one can make a new eye so adaptable and fitted for the purpose. This wisdom makes us understand and believe that behind all this there is an intelligent God and Creator, not only a life or energy or force. It makes us ask why anyone should want to call him force or energy, and not God. The light which we see of the stars and planets is not their own. It is the light of the sun which illuminates the planets and is reflected from them. It is the same light that they receive which they reflect. So it is with man. It is the will of God that is reflected in man. Although every star is not necessarily a sun, yet its light ultimately comes from a sun. If man has divine light in him, why should he commit sin or do evil, and why should there be anything that we call wrong or a sin? If it is God's will, how can it be sin? We understand this when we consider the difference between wrong and right, sin and virtue, good and evil. These differ with different people. It depends upon the standards of each one's evolution. It depends on the goal or ideal which each one has placed before him. That is why the prophets said, "The religion of each person is peculiar to himself." It is a great fault on our part when we accuse another person of an untrue or false belief, an untrue or false religion. We do not know that perhaps he has a religion which is suited to himself. His evolution or attainment in life, his temperament, his standard of morals are different. Therefore we ought, if only we could, to keep to our own religion. The standard that we believe in for our own good is quite enough. Our intelligence and experience of this life on earth create within us a world of experiences, and these experiences teach us, by comparing one with the other, that this one is for our happiness, that one is not. That which is for our happiness, we call virtue, and that which does not contribute to our happiness, we call vice. In this way the world which we make into our own is a world of personal experiences, either in our own lives or seen through the lives of others. Therefore it is quite natural that a person in Tibet should have a different religion from a person in France, and a man in Persia a different one from a man in Colombo. Although mankind is the same everywhere, a man's religion is his experience in life, and therefore his own evolution, his own experience, added to the temperament of the people with whom he lives. He can see what is good for him, and what is not, what is right and what is not right, what gives him happiness, and what keeps him from it. The world itself becomes a scripture or book to the soul. If he does not consult it, he is thoughtless. But the one who consults with the world that he has created within himself is wise. Sometimes, in his world he has decided a certain thing is a sin or evil, and yet when it comes to an action, thought or speech, he cannot follow the moral he has already made for himself, either because of the weakness of his mind or body, or because of the weakness of his will. He fails to fulfill the law of his own world, of his own scripture that he has written. Thus he falls, and that is considered by him to be sin. It is the same with virtue. We have our own sins, our own virtues, which we have made from our own experiences. If a child throws a knife at somebody, it has not committed a crime, because it has not yet set that action down as a crime in its world of experiences. It has not gathered it into that world. It only becomes a crime when the child knows it to be criminal. After that it becomes responsible for its deed. Judge not, that ye be not judged, for with what judgment ye judge ye shall be judged. We judge others according to our world of good and bad. The same world, the same scripture that is our religion judges us also when we do wrong. And no one would do wrong if his willpower helped him to do right, for how could he do something which the scripture of his own heart tells him to be wrong, had not his willpower failed him? Therefore those who repent after their crimes, faults, and failures, show thereby that it is not that they wanted to do or have these things, but that their willpower failed them. The willpower was not strong enough to help them to carry out their own standard of good, as it should help all men through the journey of life. How can willpower be developed? Are there any exercises by which it can be developed? Are there any rules to follow? Is there any knowledge to acquire? All these three are required. The first exercise to help the willpower to develop would be to check every act, word, and thought which we do not wish to occur, to avoid unintentional actions, speech, and thoughts. The other exercise that is necessary for the development of the willpower is that of seeing that neither our mind nor our body rules us, but that we rule our body and our mind. Desires such as appetite, thirst, sleep, even the desire of moving or standing or walking, all these desires should be under control. There should be a time in every day when every desire of the body is checked. See if you can do it, and then as long as you can let the body go without listening to it, do so. It takes a great deal of trouble to rule the body, for it is not willing to be ruled. Yogis, fakirs, Sufis may be seen sitting, standing in one posture for hours together. All the postures adopted are to control and govern every atom of the body, so that it may be under the control of the will. I do not mean that one should devote all one's time to these things, or even that one should have certain exercises for this. When one understands the matter and carries it out in one's everyday life, then one's life becomes a continual progress. Next, there is the control of the mind. The mind sometimes does not listen. We want to think of our business, and perhaps the mind thinks of the state of our health, or about a neighbor. It insists on thinking of something else. It may be as unruly as a wild horse which cannot be controlled. So the next step to gain control of it is by concentration, by absorption, by meditation. Concentration should be practiced in everyday life. It is necessary that our bodies and minds should act according to our will in our profession, in our office, in our ordinary life. There is a tradition of the Brahmins that Rama had two sons, Kusha and Lahu. They went with their mother to a city, where they dwelt with a great hermit of the time. Lahu, a young lad, went out to wander through the town and look at its beauty. To his great surprise, he found a beautiful horse running without a rider. And when he inquired whose horse it was, people said, "This horse is let loose with the intention that anyone who can catch it shall be crowned as king of this country." The lad, with the enthusiasm of growing strength and hope in life, thought, "What a good thing it would be if I could catch this horse." So he ran after it and tried to catch it, but every time he approached the horse, it slipped away. Again he ran after it. And again, when the horse was only a little distance away, he was just able to touch it, but again it slipped away. This went on for a long time. He was away so long that his mother became uneasy about him, not knowing where he had gone. So she told Kusha that his young brother had gone out and not returned. Kusha went out and discovered that Lahu was after this horse. He was very glad to note his brother's ambition. He knew, however, that he would never catch the horse unless he were instructed what to do. Finally, Lahu, knowing now how to catch the animal, succeeded and was able to bring it before the authorities, who declared him to be their king. This story tells us about willpower. The mind is just like a wild horse, and the will is the only thing which can catch it. The thoughts and imaginations are also unruly that we cannot think or feel what we wish. If we were able to do so, then neither could sorrow touch us again, nor could unhappiness come near, because it is the thoughts and imaginations which bring sorrow. If we could think what we wish to think, if we could feel what we wish to feel, life would be a heaven for us. When we do not feel what we wish to feel, when we do not think what we wish to think, it is just because of lack of willpower. That which is the governing power cannot hold it. The elder brother of the story is the teacher who shows the path to his younger brothers who are groping in darkness. He is sent with a message from God, the father and mother of his children on earth, to guide his younger brethren. Those who are seeking after the power to control this vehicle and have the ambition or desire to obtain the crown of life, to them will be granted the inheritance of the kingdom of their country. Personal magnetism. Everyone sees how great is the influence of personal magnetism upon success in everyday life, profession, business, family, and daily occupations. Sometimes we notice that we go to a shop to buy a certain thing, and there is something about the manner of the salesman that impels us to decide to visit the same shop the next time we need that kind of article. Even if it is a long way to the shop, we prefer not to go to one which is nearer. Similarly, it sometimes happens that a person goes to a hotel or boarding house or restaurant, and someone treats him in such a way that he decides to return to that place rather than visit another. So with doctors, solicitors, barristers, scientists, professors, and teachers of all kinds. A doctor may be well versed in his knowledge, he may have a great many degrees, but if he lacks this personal magnetism, instead of curing patients, he may make them worse. Sometimes a doctor cures the patient before giving him the prescription. Just by a word of kindness, by a manner, a tenderness, a sympathy, he makes the patient feel so much better that the disease which before was too much to bear appears to be curable after all. Half the pain has gone with just seeing the doctor, such a difference does personality make. It is a great healer. Then there may be a solicitor or barrister who antagonizes his client as soon as he sees him, and so the latter does not wish to go to him next time. Another person will impart courage and hope. His personality, his speech, everything will show that he is the man to follow, to go to for help. In family life, disagreement or agreement often arises for the same reason. The father, mother, husband, or wife may have personal magnetism, which can hold the family together. When this magnetism is lacking, a person finds it better to be among friends than to be with a relative. He would rather go out than stay at home. The home becomes a strange place because there is not that magnetism for which he lives. It is as if in midwinter a person comes to his room and finds it cold because there is no fire there. He wishes that he were somewhere else where there is a fire. Personal magnetism can create beauty around one, can attract one, can make a person attractive to his fellow men, serviceable to them. It is soothing, it is healing. What is this personal magnetism? Is it a development of psychic power or occult power? Is it an education, or is it refinement? The answer is that education helps personal magnetism, because knowledge is light, and light is beautiful, and it always helps. But this is not personal magnetism. People may be very well educated and at the same time very disagreeable. Sati says that an educated man who does not put what he has learned into practice is like a donkey loaded with books. He is carrying them on his back, but he does not know it or act accordingly. He has a load of knowledge, which serves no purpose. If his education has not made a man human, what is the use of education? It is just learning for the purpose of earning money. One may think, if magnetism is not education, is it the psychic power? Not necessarily, though it is the natural psychic or occult power that we call personal magnetism. It is not necessary to attain this kind of power by a certain practice or study. One should already have it, and when it is used in the right way, it is personal magnetism. Is magnetism then politeness? Is it polish? As polish is the fashion today, every person learns it when he mixes with people, but this is not necessarily personal magnetism, though he may think he has a winning manner. If there can be any real explanation of personal magnetism, it is the making of one's own personality into that which one expects from others. A man usually makes the mistake of expecting things from others and not doing them himself. For instance, a man is very pleased if he is well received in a friend's house, if he is spoken kindly of and treated well, if his vanity is satisfied by the action of others. He is very glad if others have a good opinion of him and overlook his defects. But seldom does he pause to do the same himself. If we only tried to give to others all the things we demand from them, if we overlook their bad points instead of expecting them to overlook ours, if we only thought, how inconsiderate I was that time when I spoke so rudely to so and so. If we only gave others all that we would like them to give us, that would create a personal magnetism. If we did to them all the things that we expect from them. The word gentleman in the English language is a very good one in this respect. It has come to refer merely to dressing well, but the ideal behind it is good. It is the ideal of gentleness, and gentleness is the essence of personal magnetism. There cannot be a better lesson than that given in the Bible, where it is said, "Blessed are the meek, blessed are the poor in spirit." But the difficulty is that man pays little attention to all these things. He thinks they are too simple. And at the same time, if you ask him the meaning of poor in spirit, he will find it very difficult to answer. Not many will know what that means. It may be understood by comparing the spirit of man with the spirit of an animal. If a tiger is lying in a certain place, and you want the tiger to get up, he will roar. If a man is lying there, and you say, "Will you please let me sit there?" he will say, "Certainly," because his spirit is poorer than the spirit of the tiger. And that is also the difference between a man and a gentleman. The gentleman is he who shows that poorness of spirit in himself, a spirit of accommodating another, letting another sit in his place if he wants to. He feels that it does not matter if another person sits in his place, it is really better. There is a person who, if we talk roughly to him, returns our words 4 times more rudely and coarsely. There is another person who, if we talk roughly to him, bears it and perhaps does not give an answer at all, or perhaps he understands and consequently avoids a fight or quarrel in his search for peace. It is written, "Blessed are the peacemakers." This is not merely the kind of peace which prevents fighting and bloodshed and strife. We may make this kind of peace many times a day from morning to night. There are 1,000 matters about which we can quarrel and get annoyed with one another. So throughout our daily life, at all times, there are opportunities of making peace. We always admire a person who shows gentleness in his movements, in sitting, walking, in his voice or words, in his thought. We admire it consciously or unconsciously. There is always a charm in gentleness, and yet man neglects it when the time comes to practice it. That which should come first comes last. If only man realized how much he likes gentleness on the part of others. If a person has gentleness of voice or expression or word, it is so charming, so winning, we know this so well, and yet we always forget it at the critical moment. Poorness of spirit comes from meekness. Meekness is mildness, which is contrary to what we call roughness. Roughness of action or roughness of speech is contrary to mildness or meekness. Our eyes naturally always enjoy softness of color rather than striking tones, because of the aggressive power in the latter, which our eyes cannot bear. We experience the same thing with the sun and moon. We do not like to look at the sun, and in India we enjoy the moonlight nights so much, we wish the moon shone every night. Why? Because it is mild, it shows meekness. Our power is the power of light, our strength of speech, thought, and action is of the same kind and the same nature as the light of the sun and moon respectively. If the light is too strong, it irritates. If it is mild, it soothes. So if we treat everyone with gentleness, our personality is always welcome wherever we are. The same gentleness in our speech will always give us success, and we will always have friends. If only we had control over our words, if only our words were always of that meek nature. Among the musicians and poets of the East, special attention is given to education in meekness and mildness. There is a Sanskrit saying, "Art becomes twice as graceful when art and mildness go together." How true it is. When we admire the art of the artist and say how beautiful it is, and he answers, "Oh, it is nothing, it is your kindness that causes you to admire it," his magnetism becomes great. From a king down to the most ordinary person, it is mildness that wins the whole world. People of all positions in life and all grades of evolution can do such a great work with this one little possession. Sati says, "If your word is sweet, you conquer the world, wherever you go you win men's hearts." Is it not what Christ means when he says to the fisherman, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men, that is, I will teach you those manners of humanity by which you will win everyone you may come in contact with"? Do you think a person can become a fisher of men by his cleverness, by his artificial polish? False is false, gold is gold. The true gold will last. The false gold will lose its brilliance. Polish is just like false gold. A person may wish to win wife, husband, father, brother, all by his cleverness, by his polish, but he will prove to be false even on a very unimportant occasion. Polish may please the eyes, but it cannot please the heart. One can polish one's actions, but one cannot polish one's heart. The polish of the heart comes from the feeling. When the action of the heart is not in harmony with the roughness of the feeling will come out all the same. All that is real will come out. The polish is only beautiful for a moment. It may show a person to be very gentle and clever for a moment, but it does not last. His friends will leave him in a short time. The relatives will all know in time that it is just external, all cleverness, not that which will last forever. It is the truth that lasts for always. All the beautiful qualities should be true qualities, not false, because the value lies in the true and not in the false. In ancient times, people of great descent, royal princes, people of educated and religious families, used to go out into the world and were not recognized as such because there was no international communication in those days. No nation knew its neighbor. Yet it happened that these persons were always recognized by their manner, recognized as belonging to such a family. Evolution has made all humanity a family, and now is the time when every individual should consider that as a member of the family, of the whole of humanity, he ought to show himself as being human in nature and show how superior he can be to the animals and the lower creatures. If we only did what animals do, if we only ate, drank, slept, bit each other, got the better of one another, we should not accomplish anything great. Their whole life is spent in pursuit of their food. In the night, animals join together and make a noise in the jungle. If we also enjoy ourselves in that way, then our amusements and joys and comforts are no greater than those of animals, unless we show some quality in our personality which animals do not possess. A Hindustani poet, Amir, says, "It is much more precious than any wealth to collect the wealth of a good manner." Because by a good manner we can make another person as kind as our own father and mother, as kind and sympathetic as our own brother and sister, as respectful as our own son and daughter, if we only have that manner. If we know how to be motherly, how to be fatherly to the young, if we know how to behave respectfully towards our elders, if we know how sympathetic and polite and good we ought to be to those who are poor or our servants, or who depend on us, if our manner is beautiful, there is no heart we can fail to win. The children of the wealthiest people may, owing to the ill manner of the parents, want to sacrifice all their fortune, their father and mother, in order to get away from them. They would even sacrifice life itself. As with children, so with less near relatives. They cannot attract as long as they have no good manner. All the physical magnetism passes away. During youth, a man may be very magnetic, but when his youth passes away his attraction may be lost. But the attraction of personal magnetism grows with years and can be used at all times. Even an old man is attractive, so that people will say, "What a nice person." By going to him we can feel so filled with joy and comfort. Although even the nearest and dearest will not always desire to spend time with an old person, they find themselves attracted to an aged one who has personal magnetism. The prophet said, "God is beautiful, and he loves beauty." What is beautiful in life? It is not only trees and plants and flowers and the external physical world. The higher beauty is the beauty of personality. By the beauty of personality, our heart is filled with joy. By the beauty of nature, only the eyes are satisfied, the heart is not satisfied. It is the beauty of personality that fills our heart with joy. There is something imparted to us, which we cannot explain. Animal magnetism passes away with the strength of the animal. Animal beauty all goes when the person is ill and his physical energy is lost. There is no longer any attraction. Personal magnetism helps in all conditions. If a person is poor, it makes him rich because his personality is such that he receives the attentions, the service, and all his life's demands with less trouble, even in spite of his humble position in life. Do we not see around us how a person of beautiful personality, however helpless, will always attract the good, the bad, and all around him? If a person lacks it, however rich, however educated, however great in position, he will only attract those who are forced into his society, or such as are looking to get some of his wealth. His relatives, forced to be with him, only long for the time when he is no more, and his wealth will be theirs. Let us think about the prophets. There are so many followers of Christ in the world today, and perhaps it is true that not everyone understands his teachings or follows him because of his teaching. But if there is anything of him, which is known to the world, if there is any of his fragrance left in the world, it is his personality. He was ready to forget and overlook the faults of others. He was ready to attend to the service of the poor, ready to play and be equal with little children. He never said, "I am a teacher from God, and people must come and bow before me." That, then, is the attitude. The poorness of spirit, the harmony in life, the harmonious temperament. From the highest to the lowest, we always find people in a state of disharmony. In clubs, associations, meetings, institutions, parliaments, all will dispute and fight. This teaches us that however evolved a person may be in his education, his position, or his power and wealth, he has not mastered the law of harmony by these. Whoever has mastered the law of harmony has developed humanity within himself. He will harmonize equally with the wise and with the foolish. It is not because he is wise that he harmonizes with the wise, nor because he is foolish that he harmonizes with the foolish. Foolish men gave their lives for Christ. Wise men worshipped him for his wisdom. They left their nets and the fishing where they had spent all their lives, because Christ harmonized with them. He answered their questions. He was tolerant. So with the story of Krishna. He is looked on as the incarnation of God, one of the greatest teachers the Hindus ever had. He was a child with little children, a cowherd with every cowherd. He was harmonious with everybody. He was wise among the learned, and was merry among the happy. He was not a king, he was not poor, he was one among all. The young and the old, everybody loved him. When he played the flute, the cows and the deer and all the animals of the jungle would come to listen. It was not the mere skill of his music, for music is not attractive if the personality is not attractive. It was his personality that attracted them. There were two friends speaking together, and one said, "That funeral which is passing is of a person who is going to heaven." Another funeral, passing later, caused this friend to remark, "For this person, the place is hell." The younger of the two friends asked, "What do you know about it?" "Oh," said the other, "it is so simple." Behind the first one were people walking with tears in their eyes, and they all looked so sad. So he must have won their hearts by his personality. His magnetism must have made such an impression that all the people appeared sad and sorrowing. But with the other funeral there were few people, and they were laughing in their sleeves and winking, and everybody had a smile, which shows that they were very pleased to get rid of him. Whatever possession, whatever power, whatever honor, whatever wealth, whatever property we have, is of no use in the end, for all is passing. But if there is any one thing which is worth gaining in life, because it lasts forever, it is humanity. Love, human and divine. Love, whether it is human or divine, is considered to be sacred in the view of the mystics, philosophers, and thinkers. That it is possible to regard it thus is shown by the fact that in its root, it is beyond both the human and the divine. As it is written in the Bible, God is love, three words which open up an unending realm for the thinker who desires to probe the depth of the secret of love. In ordinary life, we make this word mean affection for our surroundings, for our relatives or our beloved, but when we think deeply about it, we see that from start to finish, it represents the power underlying the power of all activities and all intelligences. When we study life from the material standpoint, we see there are four different stages: the mineral kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, the animal, and the human. And of these four domains, it is said by a dervish, God slept in the mineral kingdom. He dreamed in the vegetable kingdom. He woke in the animal, and he realized himself in the human. And this gradual progression shows us that underlying it there is a sense of life, which has expressed itself in every step towards the completed development of love. In the mineral kingdom we find no tendency towards love. But as the intelligence develops in the vegetable kingdom, we feel that sympathy is reflected from us into the flowers. The plants perceive and feel that which comes from us. A loving person may attend to plants and rear them and water them with love and sympathy, and they flourish. But in the hands of another it may not be so. If we only watched plants closely, we should see how much they feel our presence and our love. They flourish according to our love. The more love we give, the more fragrance, the more sweetness. Man is always working on farms and in gardens, thinking of them as material things, looking to see how plants can be improved by material means. If he could only believe it, there is a still higher means of helping them to grow, a spiritual means. The use of love and sympathy. There is a story in the East of Puran Bhagat, who was once living in exile in the forest. After a long time, during which he had developed the true love in his thought and feeling and spirit, he returned to his country. The first thing he wished to do was to sit in his garden, which had gone to ruin during his absence. He went down to it in the guise of a sage and began to water it with his little water bowl. The garden at once began to flourish, and in a short time it became such a miracle of beauty that everyone in the city began to talk about it and say, "This must be some spiritual man, since the garden begins to grow and flourish." The touch of the saints and sages and prophets makes things grow. Every kind of power lies in this one thing which we call by the simple name: love. Charity, generosity, kindness, affection, endurance, tolerance, and patience, all these words are different aspects of one. They are different names of only one thing: love. Whether it is said, God is love, or whatever name is given to it, all the names are the names of God, and yet every form of love, every name for love, has its own peculiar scope, has a peculiarity of its own. Love as kindness is one thing, love as tolerance is another, love as generosity is another, love as patience another, and yet from beginning to end it is just love. It is love's different manifestations in different directions which distinguish themselves differently and have different purposes. According to Sufi metaphysics, love has two different aspects, Jalal and Jamal, and each aspect of love has its peculiar sphere. The Jalal of love is the power of love. You may call it psychic power, will power, or power of mind, yet it is one power working through different channels. And this is the power of love. Its power manifests and acts according to its force. Its force is greater when it is unlimited, and less when it is limited. That which is called imagination, thought, perception, conception, inspiration, and intuition comes from the Jamal aspect of love. In the third stage of evolution, which is called the animal kingdom, love is still more manifest. The animal is more capable of perceiving and feeling our love and kindness, our pleasure and displeasure. When we enter a house, the dog may be delighted, or he may recognize our displeasure and feel depressed. Cats recognize our love, and so also do parrots and other pet animals of different kinds. Thus we see that the cat is vexed because another cat comes into the house, and we read how, when Joseph was in the well, it was a dog that brought him bread from a neighboring town and fed him during the time that he was in the well. And in Arabian stories we hear about an Arab who was protected and guarded by his horse. When he fell wounded on the battlefield, the horse became his protector. In man, love can develop still more, though sometimes man proves to be not only worse than animals, but even more dead to love than a rock. We would rather be with the rocks than with such a man. This is because he has developed selfishness with his evolution. He is more selfish than any other creature in the world, unless he wipes off the impression of selfishness from his heart. It would be no exaggeration to say that the reason why a man cannot achieve occult and psychic power, and the intuitive and inspirational faculty, is because he has not developed the power of love, and this failure is caused by the selfishness which has kept him back from developing the power of love. Man does not differ from the animals in his passions and emotions. The human being differs from the animal by his human qualities. These are not eating, drinking, or seeking his kind. Human qualities can only be developed by the development of love. Man has fought in all ages with his brother on account of differences of religion, differences of faith, differences of belief, differences of church, differences of community, not knowing that each religion, each time it was given, has brought only a message of love, taking a different expression each time. It has been given in different ages and to different people. They have received it according to their evolution, and yet there has really been only the one teaching, that of developing love. Love your neighbor, love your fellow man, love your enemy. There has always been the same lesson given. Christ told the fishermen to come, and he would make them fishers of men. That is to say, as fishes come into your net, so your heart full of love will become a net that will attract every man to it. Rumi says, all who see me feel attracted to me, yet do not know what it is in me that attracts them. Is it not the secret of the whole of life? If we could see to whom we are attracted in life, father, mother, sister, neighbor, or anybody that we feel drawn to, then it would seem to us to be a magnetic or psychic power. But there is no greater magnetic power than love. Its magnetic power is very great. It changes a person's voice, his heart, his manner, his form, his movement, his activity, everything becomes changed. What a difference between water and rock, that smoothness and that liquid state of being, the rise and fall of the surface of the water, compared with the rigidity of the rock. The great teachers of humanity become streams of love. It is the first sign of the sage or holy man that he himself becomes love. His voice, his feeling, his presence, everything makes one realize that there is something open in him which we do not find in everybody. This something is his deep love. The development of love is often hindered by different obstacles in life. The first obstacle is ourselves. We begin our life with selfishness, and all that we want is for self, and if there is a tendency to love, it is for one's own happiness and one's own joy. When the question comes, how much do you love me, and how much do I love you? It has come to be a trading in love. I love you, but you do not love me is as much as to say, I have bid so much, and I expect a return of love. This is trading in love, and trade cannot lead anywhere, because it makes one think of the self, and love is beyond that. To love is to give, it is not to take at all. The true lover never speaks of what he has done for his beloved, for he loves for love's sake, not for the sake of a return. If a person begins to love and makes it a love fed by the love of his beloved, then he seeks an impossible thing. If a person keeps waiting for the love of the beloved, he is bound to find that nature cannot grant that desire, unless both are traders in love. Then each takes the best of the other, each may think he loves, but neither truly loves. Love teaches the lover patience, forbearance, gentleness, because he thinks, my beloved will be displeased. I will be as gentle as possible in my action and in my movements. These thoughts are a correction to the lover. With every such thought that passes in the life of the lover, he corrects himself. Hope is the only thing in life which keeps us alive, because it feeds on love. Patience is fed by love. We can never have patience with anybody without love. How valuable is patience? As it is said in the Quran, Allah loves the patient. Another hindrance to love is its dependence on the beauty of the ideal, be it physical beauty, beauty of thought, of character, or of personality. Whatever beauty it may be, whenever love depends for its continuance or for its existence upon the beauty of its object, it must someday fail. Therefore, true love does not regard the body, the external object. In point of fact, love prepares its own ideal. For when a person says, "Oh, I have loved you for your beauty," what will he say when youth has gone and the beauty is lost? Where will the love be then? The love will change too. And if love has gone with the passing of the beauty of the object of its love, what then? Another may say, "Oh, I love you for your personality," and yet perhaps within a month the beloved may not show the same personality, the same attractive goodness. What then? We think a flower is a fleeting thing, so soon does it change, and yet the human heart is liable to a quicker change than even the flower. A person may be very good one moment, very kind, and the next moment the contrary, calm one moment, and then restless, at one time so affectionate, at another indifferent, all according to the state of mind in which he happens to be at the time. So it cannot last if it is allowed to depend on the beauty of the ideal. Such love is dependent and would sooner or later die. That is why so many hearts cannot keep the flame of love alive in them. Often it happens that lovers grow cold just from lack of understanding that love must not be for an external ideal, but that the lover has to prepare the ideal in himself. They have failed to make the self-sufficient love within themselves. Not so the sages, the holy men, the wise ones. They know that a person who is kind today can be the contrary tomorrow. Therefore, the wise lover expects both opposites in the external and inner beauty of the beloved. Those who have developed the ideal love within themselves by the aid of an object to love transform their nature into a more and more loving one in time. Their love for a certain person is akin to learning the abk, for by learning the abk one comes to be able to read not only the primer, but any book. By learning to love one, we gain a light, a torch, by the light of which we can read all things in life. It is as if in our nature we have developed something that we can give to everyone. In the East there is a saying, "A loving son is always a loving husband." This is a true philosophy. It teaches the fact that he who has known from the beginning of life what love means has laid the foundation of a whole life of being truly loving. A person who is faithful and kind to one friend can be kind to all, acquaintances, servants, neighbors, and strangers alike, because he has developed that quality. But when people pretend to love, they are kind to one and bitter to another. This shows that they are not really lovers. The real lover will show his kindness, gentleness, sympathy, all aspects of love, to everyone he meets. When one thinks about occult powers, such as knowing the condition of other people's minds, their pleasure and displeasure, also the joy and pain of another's heart, knowing what is going on at a distance, receiving news from far away in the world, we find that all these can be gained without study, just through the power of love. It is also easy and simple to one who loves. The traders with love cannot know this. The real lover will know such things without special meditation or concentration, for what can exert a greater concentration than love? If one's thoughts are scattered over pianos, chairs, tables, jewels, dress, one cannot understand such power. But if one has true interest in an ideal, the power is there before one seeks it. Therefore, all occult and psychic power is the power of love. But it is not only a matter of love for a living person. There is a love of art, of science, of music, of poetry, of all the different aspects of beauty. Love in every direction shows one the sublime vision of the beautiful. It is those who have loved the beauty of poetry who are able to enjoy its beauty and to express it to others. Those who have love of music are enabled to give their music to the world and attract the lovers of music, as well as being able to enjoy its beauty themselves. Love's power ever shows its magnetism afresh through all the ages. But love in its higher sense teaches us that there is a love, an object, a beloved that can last with us and prove satisfactory, compared with which there is nothing in life worthy of all our love, and that one object is God. But among those who say, "Oh yes, I love God," very few tell the truth. Very often that is a false pretense. How can we love the formless and colorless? It is impossible to love one whom we cannot confine within any particular beauty. It is only those who pretend to be spiritual because they are godly and pious towards those of their own sect that say, "We love God." It is as absurd to say this as to say to a beloved, "Oh beloved, I love you very much, but I do not like looking at your face." For God says, "I have made man in my own image." When man is prejudiced against man and still says, "I love God," how can God be pleased with that kind of love? How can that be true love for God which refuses to see the beauty that is before it? If God said, "If you wish to see me in the face of man, that is my own image," this would show what true love is. Also, if a person claiming to love an artist were to say to him, "I love you very much, but I cannot bear to look at your picture," what kind of love could that be? The artist has given all his soul and life to that art. His very self has, so to speak, become art, and his whole satisfaction lies in our appreciation of his art. How can those claim to love the Creator who do not love what He has created? For God could never have become known had there been no manifestation. So he who does not find sufficient beauty to admire in His manifestation cannot pretend to love God. So, too, if someone limits his love to a single object, saying, "I only love this, and there is nothing else I need," surely he has not the right kind of love either. True love is limitless. Though it begins by being limited in such a way, yet it progresses and someday breaks out. Such a thing is constantly happening in life, but people do not understand the psychic law which underlies it. Eastern people say, when someone loves another person intensely and does not care for anyone else, there will be some mishap there someday. There is always some breakdown, some danger waiting, some trouble in the future, when love is not allowed to flow freely and is limited. The Japanese and Chinese have called God jealous because He does not allow two persons to be devoted only to each other. God cannot tolerate this narrowing of love. If one tried to put the whole sea into a little jar, the sea would break it. The sea of love breaks its limited channel. To speak of the jealous God means that the unlimited force of love cannot allow its expression to be directed towards one limited object. That is why the love of God alone is the culmination of love, for love is as vast as God. Verily, love itself is God. There is a beautiful story which has been dramatized and acted in India for hundreds of years. The people never get tired of seeing it, so it is acted even today. It is called the Court of Indra. Indra is the god of heaven. His court is made up of devas and paras. The latter dance in the court. The devas are to attend the pleasure of Indra. No earthly creature is ever allowed to enter. Nothing of the earth is ever seen or allowed in the court of Indra. Once a pari, the green pari, happened to fly to the surface of the earth, and she saw a prince of that country over which she was flying, whose beauty charmed her so much that she thought that if she could in some way or other take him to her high dwellings, she would be happy. She told one of the devas about it, and he carried away Gulfam, the prince, while he was asleep. He wakes up and finds himself in a strange place and breathing a different air. After great bewilderment he sees a pari, a creature much more beautiful than the creatures of the earth. He looks at her and asks her how he comes to be there. She tells him he is in Indraloka, that she loves him and will be happy to keep him there. "I will do anything for your happiness," she says. Gulfam forgets all about his kingdom and lives with the pari, most happy in her love. Every day she has to leave him to be at her duty, and every day she returns, never saying where she has been. This arouses his curiosity, but still she will not tell where she goes and what she does. Finally she does tell him that she has to dance before Indra every day. Then he wants to go and see. She expostulates, but at length consents to take him. She keeps him behind her and hopes to conceal him with her wings as she dances before Indra. But one of the devas sees him and tells Indra, who for a long time will not believe it possible that a human being could be in his court. Then he discovers him and pronounces a curse upon him, while the pari is to be banished until she has undergone the successive stages of purification through earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Not till then can she be allowed to enter the heavens again. This story shows that in the highest dwellings, in that sphere which is Indraloka where love conquers man, the king is Indra, the perfection of beauty. The highest love must be for God, it belongs to him. And its development love should aim at that idea. The pari is the human soul, Gulfam is the human body. The soul which is heavenly becomes interested in this earthly body. But when by the power of love it comes from the earth to the heavenly sphere, it brings to heaven an object which is destined only for the earth. The love of a limited being is not allowed to remain in heaven and will be condemned to be purified and uplifted until it can never more find satisfaction in a limited object, in the love for a human being. Homage must be paid to the Lord of heaven. True love must have free flow, and to learn that free flow the teachers have taught us first to love from the limited, and thence to advance in love, till we attain to the love of God, the unlimited. Intuition. Intuition is a part of knowledge that is beyond man's personality and above his knowledge of things and names. It comes at times when man becomes passive and exposes himself to that knowledge, consciously or unconsciously. There are some who are more intuitive, and there are others who are less so, and if we study the nature of their character, we shall know the nature of their intuition. Those who are confused, who are constantly hurried, who are changeable in their nature, who are afraid of death, of disease, of their own actions, of their enemies, of their surroundings, those who have constant doubt, wondering whether they can trust this person or that, whether a friend may or may not prove worthy, and so on. It is all these who have less possibility of intuition. Those who can trust without troubling themselves, those who have few doubts, are usually clearer in their perception. Those who trust in the inner guidance, who understand the secret of the instinct that works through animals and all creatures, those who are pious, those who wish to walk in the light, who always prefer the right way of thinking and speaking and acting, it is these who often experience intuition. Intuition is the first step, inspiration is the second, and revelation is the third. When revelation begins, it has arisen from intuition, for intuition is the first stage. What is its way of manifestation? How is intuition expressed? Intuition is of two kinds. It may come without intention, without being invited, or it may come when one asks oneself a question. In the first kind, a person may be sitting down, and the thought comes to him that a danger is awaiting him. In what way it may occur he does not know, he just feels it. Next day he finds that something was going to happen to him. Then he sometimes thinks that happiness is coming from a friend, that someone from whom he has been parted for a long time is coming to see him. Sometimes he thinks an enemy is going to turn into a friend, and yet he had not been thinking of the subject. The thought comes to him suddenly. It proves true, it proves right. Without inquiry, a thought comes to us which tells us of a coming event. People sometimes take this to be a spirit communication, sometimes they take it to be thought transference from someone else. Both ideas are possible, but intuition is a greater and higher thing than spirit communication or thought reading, because it is pure, it is our own property, it belongs to us. In this we do not depend upon a spirit or upon another person sending a thought to us. In this we are perfectly independent. We receive the knowledge from within, which is far superior, greater, and higher. The second kind of intuition is that of which it is said in the Bible, "Knock, and it shall be opened unto you." Knocking at the door is asking within one's own self, what will become of this particular business, or aim, or object that I am thinking of? As soon as one knocks at the gate of God, which is one's heart, from there the answer comes, and it is a truer answer than any other person can give. There is no one who can know as much about our life, affairs, objects, motives as we do ourselves. And therefore nobody can advise us better than ourselves. Mankind cannot understand this secret, and consequently begins by depending on the advice of others. This would be advantageous if one had the good fortune to find a better advisor. But sometimes the person from whom advice is asked is foolish, sometimes he is an enemy, sometimes he himself is in confusion and cannot advise. Therefore people keep themselves from their real and true advisor. The guiding faculty within. Intuition begins in the form of impressions. As soon as we see a person we have an impression of him. His face, his features, his expression, his atmosphere have in a way made an impression on us of his goodness, his righteousness, his wisdom or foolishness, his being useful or not, his being displeased with us or not, his being our friend or enemy. Whatever his condition may be, we receive it without knowing from any other source that these are his feelings. According to our own openness of spirit we get our impressions. We may receive a kind of impression as to whether we will be successful in our business or not. All these impressions convey to a man that his intuition is beginning. That is the first step. After having intuition about individuals in their relation to ourselves, the next step is the intuition which occurs when another person is telling us of his projects. We have an impression as to whether they will be successful or not. We cannot give a reason for it, or even if we do we become aware that as we utter the reason it is not the real reason. For as soon as we begin to think it out, we at once descend from the higher, the spiritual source of information. To try and prove the basic truth of its spiritual source by means of reason is to use earthly means to establish that which belongs to heaven. A proper reason for an intuition cannot be given. The source from which this knowledge comes is not reason. People who are very good at reasoning can go on fighting all their lives, and yet nothing may come of it. Ultimately their reasoning turns into a play on words and terms, and as a word can be made to mean anything, they have always an easy way of escape from being caught by the person with whom they argue. It is just like wrestling, or just as in a court of law, two barristers will each present their case as being the truth, even though they may in fact know that it is not true. They fight with their reason and logic. First of all, it is necessary to realize that when we see that our impressions are right and our doubts cannot destroy them, and we have been right in 10 impressions and wrong in only one, then we know that the wrong one was not what we thought it was. When this realization has evolved, then we are able to know things intuitively. The difference between imagination and intuition is sometimes puzzling to define. Both come in the same way. When a certain imagination began to construct itself, we cannot say. The imagination came suddenly, but so also does intuition. That is why it is so difficult to discriminate between them. The truth is that if imagination comes with light, then it is certainly intuition. Every imagination is intuition until it has been corrupted by reason, And when the intuition is corrupted by reason, it becomes imagination. But every imagination and every thought which is illumined by the intelligence is always an intuition, and therefore to an illuminated person any thought or imagination is intuition. To him there is never a thought or imagination which is not an intuition. But it is difficult to keep these from being corrupted by reason, because as soon as they are produced, we doubt whether they are right or not right. We doubt it until we have killed all the truth of our intuition. Our doubts are always the enemies of our intuition, and therefore practice is required in everyday life to keep intuition from being corrupted and finally destroyed by our doubts. We ought to build a fence round intuitions as if they were delicate plants, and protect them from being destroyed by reason and doubts. By doing so, in time we grow to be sure of our intuitions, and then we never fail to get things right. And when the intuitions become right, then the dreams become right. We see what is really going to happen in every thought which comes to us, the truth of life. Then our life becomes a miracle. There is no need to look for wonders in the outside world. Our own has become full of wonders. To the illuminated one, every night's dream becomes a book that tells the past, the present, and the future, both of himself and of all those whom he cares for or wishes to know about. The next step is inspiration. Inspiration is not only the coming of a single thought, a single idea, but of a flow of ideas. One may express them in poetry, in music, in philosophy, in speech, in writing, in thinking. The inspirations come as many ideas. Inspiration is a developed intuition. The expression of inspiration is according to one's particular ability. If a person speaks a beautiful language, he can express his ideas in that language. All prophets and messengers have received the same message, but they have uttered it in different languages. Why? Because surely it is one idea, one knowledge from heaven, but it is expressed according to the language the receiver is accustomed to, seeing that he has no other with which to express it. The angels are not as great as man, because though they are gifted with the higher knowledge and are in the higher spheres, they have no power of expression. Man gets his knowledge from the higher source, but expresses it through the means provided by the lower spheres. The Quran tells that God said to the angels, "I am going to create man, who will be the chief of creation." They asked, "Are we not a satisfactory army of servants who are always busy in thy praise and admire thy beauty and glorify thy name? Why intendest thou to create one who will do evil and shed blood, as he will do?" The answer was, "Are you capable of appreciating all that I have made? Can you tell me what are the names of these things that I have made?" God asks man. Man tells him all the names of things. The things that are sweet or bitter, then names of all manner of things. He knows and enjoys all these things in nature. That is why God says, "We have created him that he may be the chief of all creation, and enjoy all that we have created." Therefore those who think that the heavenly knowledge is sufficient are mystical, but the joy of the heavenly knowledge and the full understanding of it come from being able to express it in this world's medium of expression. Therefore man can have knowledge both from within and from the external world. When the two come together, there is a perfect expression. The last and most delicate degree of intuition is revelation. This comes to prophets and perfected beings. This is a full light thrown upon the human personality, full light from within. To their eyes, ears, sense of taste or touch, all things disclose their secret. Those who have received this knowledge even partly have by receiving it come to understand the properties of this plant or that, to know that this bitter medicine is good for this purpose, this sweet one for that, this drug or that vegetable for another. The knowledge of the property of the names and forms of the world is understood by them to the extent that revelation has helped them. When they look into the mind, they know all about the mind. When they study the earth, they come to know it. Whatever they try to know, they succeed in knowing, such is revelation. Those who look in the higher spheres are prophets, those who look on the earth are scientists, musicians, soldiers, and so on. It is from the direction in which he has studied that a man receives the revelation. In the higher spheres all things become clear to those who direct their attention to these spheres. A man even sees his future in the teacup, with limited light. Similarly, he sees it in cards, in the crystal, in the coals of the fire, in smoke. All these things have the future written in them. It is the same light that shines upon them and begins to reveal itself in them. It is not only books, but all things in nature which begin to reveal the secrets of nature to him. Sati says, when the eyes open and begin to see with the divine light and divine sight, even the leaves of the trees become as the pages of the sacred book. Faith. When the question of faith arises, the orthodox always think that it is their religion which is being spoken of. To have faith in a religion, in the priests or clergy, in a certain dogma, ceremony, principle, or in a certain form of teaching, this is what is usually understood by the word faith. On the other hand, those who are intellectual and look at life from a different point of view say, faith is blind, why should we believe blindly? To a mystic, faith is the unique power that works through the whole of creation. He does not mean by faith a belief in a certain religion or dogma or ceremony or book or teacher. He means trust, a trust even in the absence of reason. Many people possess this quality naturally, while others do not seem to possess it. We may think that one person has brought faith with him, and another has not, because he has or has not that quality. But when we study life minutely, we find that there is no soul which does not possess faith. How true it is, as the prophet says, every soul when born is a faithful follower, it is afterwards that he turns to the contrary. This really means that every soul is born on earth with a simple faith, and it is only afterwards that he doubts. If it were not so, we should never have been able to learn the language we speak. Was it not learned by faith, from infancy? When the mother says, "This is a tree," the child says tree. When she says, "This is water," the child calls it water. And there are many things which the parents speak of apart from ordinary everyday matters, and the child believes them, as they want him to believe. Whether the names given to the things are right or wrong, the child takes them as his guardians wish him to take them, for that is his natural tendency. In the beginning every soul has faith. Then how is it that man loses this quality which nature has bestowed on him? He loses it by the knowledge of names and forms. As he grows, he covers up his faith with the knowledge of names and forms, calling that learning. At every step in his progress towards knowledge, he compares things and considers some things better than others, saying of one thing, "This is true," of another, "This is false, that is what I can believe and rely upon, and this is what I cannot believe and rely upon." The one thing he calls true, the other false, but in reality neither is true or false. It is only at the beginning of knowledge that man passes through this stage. Later, when a person has raised himself above ordinary knowledge, he arrives at a stage when he is able to say, All that I have called true is not true, and all I have called false is not false. He finds that whatever difference there is only a difference of comparison. This point of view is difficult and vague, and everybody does not perceive it. The course of human life involves so many disappointments, so many failures, so many heartaches, that no one can avoid doubting. There is a peasant saying, "He who has once burned his tongue with hot milk tries to cool even buttermilk by blowing on it." When a man has been deceived by one person, he distrusts 10 people. When he has found one person unreliable, he may perhaps consider 100 others to be so too. After failing in one thing, he suspects he will fail in 1,000 things. So many things take away that natural and powerful quality which was at first present, that faith which is the secret of the whole creation, the secret of all success that can never be attained in life. This faith is broken by life's discouraging experiences. When confidence in others is lost, then confidence in self is lost also, and the more it is lost, the more failures one meets. A doubting person considers himself to be wise and one of simple faith to be a fool. Whoever he sees he suspects, whatever he hears he questions whether it is right or wrong. He will doubt even his friend in business, waiting for the time to come when he can trust him. But that time never comes. His very doubts create doubts in the mind of the suspected person, and often the doubts come true as the effect of the doubter's thought, or at least it creates an illusion which for the moment shows the picture of his doubts. How truly the story of Othello demonstrates this. The more he doubted Desdemona, the more proofs for his doubts life created. His belief was fed more and more by the illusory proofs, until in the end, he could not possibly believe the least thing contrary to his doubts. So it is with our own lives. We doubt, and by that very doubt that which we fear happens, because it is created by us in the other person's heart. Whether the actions we see support our doubt or only seem to support it, yet our suspicion creates the desire in the doubted person. We can experience the same thing with dogs. If we have the least fear of a dog barking or biting, he will bark and come up to us and bite us. If there is no fear in us, the dog will not come towards us. The fear which makes us suspect that a dog will bite is enough to give the dog the desire to bite, because we are looking for it to do so. If we could only develop the quality which is called faith, about which so much is said in the scriptures, in the Bible, in the Quran, we should find what power it would carry. It is the secret of all success. We are here to fulfill the purpose of our life. What is that purpose? Our desire, our inclination which is constantly at work in our mind, that is the purpose of our life. If we are unable to fulfill that inclination, we go from this world without accomplishing our purpose. As Omar Khayyam says, heaven is the vision of fulfilled desire, hell is the shadow of a soul on fire. If the desires are not fulfilled, the soul is naturally on fire. But there is no reason why the desire should not be fulfilled. The very existence of a desire promises its fulfillment. And the heart of man is the desire of God. The Quran says that without the will of God, not even a single atom can move. This shows that every wave of thought and feeling, every motion and action is from God. Every thought that comes to our mind is God's thought, even if it appears to be a thought of everyday life in the world. Once man realizes that every activity and impulse that comes into his mind is really from God, from that time he feels that it must be fulfilled. If it is not fulfilled, It is man's limitation that is the cause of its hindrance. He has allowed his weakness to hinder its accomplishment. It is man's lack of faith that generally causes failures. And faith is the secret of fulfillment or non-fulfillment of every thought. There is no doubt about the fulfillment of a desire if man's faith works with it. But when one's own reason and doubt come and destroy the hope, one generally meets with failure. What an important part faith plays in life. Can there be anything equal to it? In the Arabic language it is called iman. The whole of religion is faith, however much people have called the separate religions faith. Faith itself is a religion. Does this mean that one is to believe and trust anyone blindly? Would not that be a blind faith? Would it not be obscuring the reason, the power of discrimination between right and wrong, between possible and impossible? Suppose a person says you are going to be a king, and you believe it. This would be a blind faith, since there is no possibility of it being realized. Still more impossible would it be to believe if he said, "You are a king," when you see no sign of kingship in your life, but rather the contrary. But the point is that the first lesson to be learned is to have faith in oneself. How many among us there are who have no faith in themselves? It is this very lack that makes them have no faith in others. Once a person has faith in himself, he can have faith in others also. For instance, if one feels a person to be good and spiritual, what does it matter if the whole world does not think the same? But if somebody says, "I do not know, perhaps the other person thinks right, and I do not," then he has no faith. He does not know what faith is. He may have faith in a man, and yet as the days go on the time comes when he will lose it. A person who does not believe in himself cannot believe in anybody else, and is really an unbeliever. Faith must begin within. Belief in oneself should be so strong that even if 1,000 people say no, one will say yes. To look to others for every opinion, not trusting oneself to say whether it is day or night, is to end by not only distrusting others, but by developing a kind of insanity. Faith means self-confidence. The secret of faith is that it can be used as a medicine, and it will be better than medicine. It can be wealth, and greater than wealth. It can be a religion, and greater than religion. Happiness, and greater than happiness. For nothing can buy or sell faith. If there is anything that can be called the grace of God, it is faith and self-confidence. It is something one can neither teach nor develop. It must be in one, and one can only strengthen it by loving it, by enjoying it. It must develop by itself. Faith is in fact a power operating all through our lives, and imparted to us from the time of our birth. This power is obscured as soon as reason is developed, which occurs during the process of acquiring the knowledge needed for merely maintaining life, and then one loses one's self-confidence, as well as one's confidence in others. This is doubt, which is the greatest enemy of the soul in its progress towards self-realization. It is removed as soon as one perceives that faith is really a power from God, by which he seeks to express himself through the individual. Confidence is assured, not by blind belief, but by careful insight into the life which surrounds us. The higher self is then able to be like the rider on a horse, and direct all the affairs and actions of the lower self. Faith defends the innate desire of the higher self, and the more faith develops, the greater is its influence, through us, upon our whole environment. Faith breeds faith. Also, faith must dominate the reason and direct the reason. And it will do this the more surely when we realize that every thought, desire, and impulse that comes to our heart is from God, to be accomplished for some great purpose of His own. Sometimes a person will say, "I had great faith once, but in the course of my life I have met with people one could never trust. They deceived me, and since then I have lost faith in everybody." That person is much to be pitied. He has lost so much more than anybody else. The good quality which was in him has been killed by unfortunate experiences. How important it is that the heart of the faithful should be kept unbroken. In India, birds are made to fight as a sport. It is called buttus. Two birds are brought together on a table, while all stand round to see the fun. As soon as the birds see one another, they attack each other. The owner of each bird thinks that his bird will win, the prize will be his. But as soon as it appears as if one bird will be beaten, the owner takes it away, saying to the other, "You have won, we will not continue the fight." This is because he wants to save his bird from being disappointed. The bird would then be without faith. Those who have no faith in themselves, those whose faith is broken, are like the bird which is allowed to be beaten. However strong he may become, there will always remain the impression in his mind of having been beaten, and this he cannot bear. It is like this with the elephant too, giant animal that he is. Once it is beaten, all his strength and power go. For years he will not forget it. In spite of all that power which is within him, he will never attack another elephant. The faith that really gave him his power has all gone. There is a Hindustani saying, "Failure and victory are both in the mind." If there is failure, it is in the mind. If there is victory, it is also in the mind. As long as the mind has not failed, a seeming failure may be a victory. But if the mind has failed, a seeming victory becomes a failure. That great power which the mind has is nothing but the power of faith. People who have done great works have not done them because of their worldly heritage. For instances occur in which people began life without a penny, and yet have ended their lives the possessors of millions. They have had no help to encourage them in life, or to raise them in life, they have raised their position themselves. So we see that reason has no part in faith. People may be called fanatics because they work only by faith, their critics thinking that faith only enables them to imagine things. But there are numberless people who are thinking and reasoning all their lives, asking themselves, "Shall I do this? How can I do that? How can I overcome these obstacles?" And all the time they are thinking of the hindrances, or waiting for suitable circumstances to arise, and they never do. Their whole life may be spent in the pursuit of something which reason prevents them from attaining. It is quite otherwise with faith. When there is faith, there is no thought about whether there are any means of accomplishing the desire that has entered one's mind, or whether there are no means. This does not matter when faith is there, to care for and to defend the thought, to reign upon the thought and make the plant grow and bear fruit, so that one day one may see its realization. Ask those people who have led wonderful lives in the world. See what they have to say about it. What does Christ say? What does Muhammad say? Christ said to Peter, when he walked on the water, "O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt?" If Peter had had faith, he could have conquered the waters. In the different wars that the Prophet of Arabia had to face throughout his life, what do we find? From the beginning to the end there were wars. He was born an orphan, for his father was no longer alive, and his mother died in giving him birth. There were no resources, either of money or of influence when the message was given. Later the whole community rose against him. Even his relatives were against him. What stood by him? It was his faith. His call to his people was to have faith. It once happened that when the army of the prophet's enemies had been successful, one among them by chance caught the prophet alone. He was kneeling on his chest and wanted to kill him. But before doing so, he said, "O prophet, all your life you have taught the name of God. Now tell me where your God is. Where has he gone?" And the prophet called on the name of God, on whom he called night and day, and as soon as that name came to his mind, the strength of the whole world came into the prophet. With one bound he brought the man down, took his sword in his hand, and said, "Who will save thee now, since thou art again in my hands?" And he answered, "Thou, Muhammad." And Muhammad said, "O man of little faith, till now thou hast not learned the lesson. Now thou hast seen that my faith in him saved me. He has just saved me. If thou takest the name, he will save thee too. Ask him." The strength of that faith and the hope it imparts, the power it gives, the might that faith can give, is there anything like it? One person may doubt and doubt. One moment he believes that things will come right, and then he fears that perhaps they will not. Another person will trust, and he will be watching, and his trust will become bigger with every experience. There is a story of a Sufi who was traveling with a caravan through Arabia. Among the travelers were some who had money with them for their expenses. They came to a place where it was said that robbers were likely to be, and that everybody should take care of his own purse, as many caravans had been robbed in that area. This young Sufi also had some money, but he thought to himself, "I have no place to keep my money. I will find some man with whom I can leave it. To whom can I give it for safety?" He was wondering if there could be any village or habitation, but he could see only a tent some distance away from where the caravan had come to a halt. So he went and found a man sitting smoking his pipe in the tent. He went up to him and said, "I do not know you, sir, but I have heard there are robbers here, and that many caravans have been robbed, and I am a poor man. I thought I should protect my money. If I could only find someone to whom I could trust it, having found this tent, I feel I should entrust it to you." He left the purse and returned to the caravan. When he arrived, he found that the caravan had been robbed and all had lost their money. He was very glad he had escaped. They were all moaning and lamenting about their losses. He thought that he at any rate was safe. Then they described the robbers, saying how many of them had come, how many had been there. He returned to the tent to fetch his money again. He found the same man smoking there, but he was surrounded by many men, for he proved to be the chief of the robbers. The others were all sitting there, fighting and disputing what share each should take, and the chief was helping them to divide their spoil. So the young man was afraid to go nearer, and at the same time could not help thinking how foolish he was not to have kept his money, for while he was bringing it the robbers had come, and so he would have escaped anyway. The others had lost everything, but he had fooled himself. While he was thinking this, and was about to turn away, the chief called out for him to be fetched. He approached the chief trembling, because he believed that now even his life was in danger. The chief said, "Why did you come here? Why are you turning back?" The young man asked, "Are you not the head of the robbers? Then why should I not wish to go? What use can it be to come?" The chief answered, "Man, I received your money to keep. I did not rob you of it. you trusted me. The money is therefore in my trust. Even if I am a robber, I am not dishonest. I gain by robbery, not by breaking trust. You trusted me with your money, and your money is safe. Here it is for you to take back again." So the young man was delighted, reflecting what a good thing trust is, inasmuch as one may have faith even in a robber, for he had proved himself trustworthy. We can see this in our everyday life. A servant, a helper, an assistant, a co-worker, a partner, can be made either trustful or distrustful, trustworthy or unworthy of trust. This we do ourselves by our own faith. How true it is that when faith is beginning to fail, when doubts begin to come, the loss of faith goes on until a person begins to doubt his nearest and dearest friends. Husband can doubt wife, wife can doubt husband, brother can doubt sister, parents can doubt children. One can doubt one's nearest friend, and in the end one doubts oneself. That is the utmost limit. From then on, life can be nothing less than torture. The question arises, is it right to cover up our reason and act according to our faith? The answer is that it is not right. Reason is the servant of faith, and faith is the king of reason. But failure comes when reason becomes the king, and faith the servant. Success comes when faith is king and reason is the servant. If faith says, "I wish to open a factory," reason replies, "Yes, you can proceed with your factory in this way. You will be successful." Reason is the servant, faith is the first thing. Faith says, "I will succeed," reason says, "These are the different paths you will have to take." This is how faith is helped by reason. It is very different when reason is king. When reason is king, it says, "Open a factory." Why, just look at yourself, without a single penny in your pocket. Faith says, "Yes, you are right." Reason says, "You don't know anything about a factory. How can you pretend to carry on such work?" And faith answers, "Yes, I will not think about it anymore." When reason is the leader of faith, the result is failure. It is when faith is the leader of reason that success comes. With regard to trusting people, a person may think, is it right to believe in anything a person says? Is it right to trust everybody? There are many people who are not worthy of trust. Shall we then trust everybody in order to develop our trust? The answer is yes. Perhaps we will have failures, but we will only trust another person when we trust ourselves. When we have faith in ourselves, then we will have faith in another. Without faith in ourselves, we can never have faith in another. To have faith in another is to have faith in ourselves. It does not matter if once or twice we are disappointed, but if we are afraid of being disappointed even once in our lives, perhaps we will doubt all through life, and so there will never come a time when we will be able to trust anybody, even ourselves. There are many things that can develop our trust. Sometimes an unworthy person can become worthy of trust. The Hindus say that if one has faith in an idol god, that God will listen and grant one's desires, but if one has no faith in the God of heaven, even he is helpless to do anything for one. The Bible says that faith like a grain of mustard can remove mountains. There is a story that a preacher was once speaking in a little village in India. The peasants he was preaching to could not understand philosophy or mysticism or the great problems of life. What the preacher taught was, have faith in God. Faith is such a great virtue. And he told them that if a person repeated the sacred word, he would be able to walk on water. Everyone was delighted to hear this, saying, "What a great thing." He is always talking about the same thing. Next day an old man came and said, "Sir, I cannot understand the deep problems of life, but I was very delighted with your idea last evening." The preacher answered, "What was that?" He said, "I was very much surprised. Will you come and dine at my home? It will be such an honor." The preacher said, "Yes, with great pleasure." A day was appointed. When the day came, the man arrived to fetch the preacher, and they set off together. On their way there was a little river which had to be crossed. When they reached the bank, the preacher said, "Where is the boat? Why do you ask for a boat?" The peasant replied, "The other day you said that when you use that sacred word you can walk on the water. And I was very much astonished to find that it is so. Why take a boat when it is only necessary to say that word?" But the preacher could not do it. He was not a true teacher. So he said to the old man, "You are my teacher. I have spoken, but you have acted, and if I had had your faith I should also have been able to cross the water." This shows us that things sometimes seem obscured, as if in a mist, as if seen through a dark glass. We fear beforehand that a thing will never come, that there will always be disappointment, failure, sorrow. Depression comes on. We begin to think that times will never alter, and the same conditions will always continue. The only remedy to clear these clouds away is to look for a better time, to hope for something better in life, to feel that every thought, desire, and impulse that comes to our heart is from Him, and that it is to be accomplished, with all that power, for some purpose. No circumstances in our lives, not even friends and advisors, nor our reason or our doubt, should be allowed to prevent the realization of our thoughts. It is through that one thing, faith, that our thoughts are kept powerful and full of strength. It is by nothing but that one thing, faith. And that's not all. Our experts and regular viewers respond to all comments. Also check if you forgot to subscribe and set your bell to receive notifications about new audiobooks and other useful self-development materials that we release regularly. Join in the discussions, don't forget to give likes and, if possible and inspired, support the development of the channel financially. All useful links will be in the description and the first attached comment. Goodness, love and wisdom to all. And now move on to watch the next part of the video at the links below, or choose something from the playlists of the channel and those you see on the screen.